In this video, I'm going to be talking about sleep. I'll start with the sleep-wake cycle and then talk about REM sleep and shared sleeping and SIDS. First of all, the sleep cycle. There's a difference between newborns and older people connected to this. Newborns sleep on average 16 to 17 hours a day, whereas as an adult it is 8 to 9 hours. So it's a slow change through the first few years of life to get you to that point. For example, at 1, you're sleeping on average just 13 to 14 hours. Children sleep usually 10 to 11. And finally, at the end of adolescence is when you hit that 8 to 9 for the perfect amount of sleep you need. Another change you see for newborns versus older adults is connected to the sleep pattern. For newborns, the longest duration of sleep is not necessarily during the day. It takes 6 months for you to get to the point of sleeping mostly at night. There are things you can do to facilitate this, but there is a good reason that newborns are getting up all night. They don't have the same circadian rhythm, that sleep-wake cycle connected to light-dark that other people do. By about 6 months is when American infants typically sleep 8 hours at night. This night waking is definitely the most common complaint connected to kids and sleep. And it is something to try to work on because sleep at 12 months is correlated with sleep efficiency at 4 years of age. Basically, this means if you have a horrible 1-year-old sleeper, there is a fairly good chance that you're going to have a horrible 4-year-old sleeper as well. So the faster you can get the sleep thing under control, the better. We are not getting into the different methods, sleep training methods. Actually, all of them tend to be similarly effective, whether you choose graduated extinction, full out extinction, extinction with parental presence, fading, scheduled wakings. There are a bunch of different things out there to try to get your kid to sleep better. All of them work equally as well. There are pros and cons to all of them, but the sooner you can actually get that kid to learn to sleep, the better for you in the long run. And this sleep thing varies by culture. Some cultures, they expect sleep to occur better earlier. Lots of things connected with that. Another thing where you see a difference with young infants and other people is with the REM cycle. So at this point, everyone should know what REM stands for, rapid eye movement. For infants, for newborns, they start their night in REM. So that is one difference with the REM cycle and newborns. They start their night. If you've ever put a very young child to sleep, it looks as if their eyes are almost fluttering and you're not sure if they're really asleep. You think they might be in light sleep. It's not light sleep, they're already dreaming. So that takes a few months, 3 months actually, to get it so that they start their night in stage 1 and REM 1 versus REM sleep. Another big difference with REM for younger infants versus older ones is the amount of the night spent in REM. So for young children, newborns, it's 50% of their night is REM sleep, whereas by adulthood it's only 20%. And there's a good reason for that. In REM sleep, you have a lot of neural work that is going on. Neural repair, the neurons are getting replenished, you're building that myelin, the dendrites are forming, and in a very young infant, a whole lot more of that is going on. So 50% of their night is REM versus just 20% of the adults. They start their night in REM versus having it begin later on in the sleep cycle. Also, they don't quite have that 90-minute cycle, but that's something your book does not go into as much. And those are two big differences with REM and sleep, and infants. Another thing connected with sleep and infants is SIDS. SIDS stands for Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. It's when a child dies in his or her sleep and there is no cause that they can attribute to it. Then they call it SIDS. It's the leading cause of death in infants in the US. And there are several factors that increase or decrease the likelihood. One has to do with the age of the child. SIDS peaks from 2 to 4 months, you're not going to see this as much in older infants. It's most common between 2 to 4 months. If you sleep on your stomach, if the baby sleeps on the stomach, it significantly increases the SIDS rate. There was a program called Back to Sleep, and that program cut the rate of SIDS in half in the US. So sleeping on the back plays a huge part in it. Oftentimes, well, not often, 10 to 15% of the time, it is because of a heart arrhythmia. So the child who dies of SIDS happened to have a heart arrhythmia as well. And they think that that helps to contribute to it. It's a gene mutation. Other factors that play a part are smoking. If secondhand smoke, if the parent smokes, even if the parent smokes outside the house, just having a smoking parent is going to increase the risk of SIDS. Not sleeping with a pacifier. Sleeping with a pacifier helps to prevent the child from getting to as deep of a sleep, which helps to keep them alive. If you have a sibling that died of SIDS, you're more likely to die of SIDS. If you sleep on soft bedding, that is going to increase it because of the suffocation risk. If you have an abnormal brain stem, that is going to increase it because that is that survival function. If your brain stem is not functioning correctly, when you get into those deeper stages of sleep, it's more likely something's going to go wrong with that and cause you to stop breathing. If you have sleep apnea, if you're born with sleep apnea, that plays a part. If you have a low birth weight, that increases it, as well as economic factors. Lower income, lower socioeconomic status also increases the risk of SIDS. So again, smoking, bedding, birth weight, pacifier use, the brainstem, economic status, what potentially killed your siblings, and sleep apnea are all factors connected with SIDS. And then finally, the last thing connected to sleep you should know has to do with shared sleeping. This is also something that is controversial. There are some pros and some cons connected to shared sleeping, also called co-sleeping. A couple of the pros, some good things with shared sleeping, is it promotes breastfeeding. It's easier to nurse your child at night if your child is right there. It also helps you respond more quickly when your infant is upset. You don't have to get out of bed, go to the other room. Your kid, again, is right there. It's easier to detect if there's breathing problems with your child. So we'll talk about a version of this that decreases the chance of SIDS. Some versions increase it. But if the kid's right there, you can tell if breathing is screwy, and if the infant is sleeping right next to the mother, the infant's breath will become parallel with the mother's breathing. So it helps to decrease the chance that the child will stop breathing in the night. Now, connected with this, some people say that co-sleeping increases the chance of SIDS because of a couple factors. If the child presses against the mother in a specific way, it can potentially suffocate the child. If the child is pressed against the mom and the mom doesn't realize it, the kid can't breathe and is too small to push away, that can cause issues. If the parents have been drinking or are morbidly obese and roll over on the child and don't realize it, that can also cause serious issues. So there are some problems with having the child right there in the bed potentially. So many professionals recommend a shared room with the infant. That is what specifically the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends, that a newborn is in the room with the parents. But room sharing is different than sharing the same bed. So they recommend the child be in their own sleeping area, but in the same room with the parents, so you can get some of the benefits of being close by without some of the risks connected with it. Again, still a fairly controversial issue, and the rates of shared sleeping vary drastically based on where you are in the world.